Well, welcome back to another edition of 42nd Street Pete's Grindhouse. And let's go back to Westerns again. I mean, what the fuck? There was a Western that came out in 1973 called The Deadly Trackers. And this was a film that was originally envisioned by Samuel Fuller, the director, who was going to direct it based on a book that he had written. And the original stars were going to be Richard Harris and Bo Hopkins. Well, for some reason, Warner Brothers shit-canned that idea and brought it back later, but with a different cast. They kept Richard Harris as the sheriff. Al Lettieri was brought in as this Mexican sheriff. And the outlaw gang would be comprised of Rod Taylor, William Smith, Neville Brand, and Paul Benjamin. And this is a really nasty, nasty-ass film for a lot of reasons. You see my dog bugging me here. It starts off with a really weird title sequence where basically it seems like these sepia tone photos and people talking and stuff like that. Then you see like the gang ride up, and like I said, the gang is what the hell was his friggin' name? Oh God, Frank Brand. That was his name. Frank Brand. That was Rod Taylor's bad guy name. Another guy was Choo Choo, Neville Brand, who for some reason has part of a railroad track as a hand. This is explained later and it makes no fucking sense. William Smith is a half-wit called Schoolboy who likes to stab people and take their hats. And Paul Benjamin is Jacob, but he's not really called Jacob by the Frank character. He's usually called the N-word over and over again. Well, anyway, they decide to go into the bank and rob the bank and basically kill anybody in their path. Well, everybody has high hopes for the sheriff, who obviously doesn't wear a gun. And they surround the robbers, but the robbers are in the bank, and the bank teller is rattling on about how they're not going to get away with this, so Frank shoots him in the head. Schoolboy stabs a guy and takes his derby. The townspeople all get guns, get on the roofs, basically have everybody surrounded. They capture everybody but Frank, who was in the schoolhouse where the sheriff's wife and kid are, and comes out holding a gun against the sheriff kid's head. And he basically, you know, I'm going to kill this kid unless you let my guys go and we're taking the money. Well, of course, the sheriff is a peacenik and has to back down to all this stuff. So he agrees, has all the men drop their weapons and stuff. Well, Frank decides he's going to use the kid to ride out of town with and then leave him at the end of town. Well, when they start riding out, the mother sees this and runs up and tries to pull the kid off of Frank's lap. Frank responds by shooting her right in the face. Then the kid gets tossed off the horse and the rest of the gang run over him in a really bad scene. It's only fair to tell you people, this fucker's only rated PG, which just shows how much attention the ratings board paid to the major companies like Warner Brothers and shit all over the smaller companies and whacked them with an R and an X. So anyway, the gang gets away. Of course, the sheriff is going to go after them, and he's going into Mexico after them. Well, they're splitting up the loot, and Schoolboy, who is Bombats, basically is sitting there playing with his gold. I don't know where he got these gold chains from. They don't keep them in a bank. And the other three ride off as the sheriff rides up on them. Well, there's a fight, and his buddies are watching him fight, and in a really grotesque scene, which I'm pretty sure they must have cut something out, he slices Schoolboy's throat, and there's a quick cutaway, but when the sheriff gets up, he is drenched from blood from his neck to his knees. So I'm sure something was taken out of there. Maybe that's where they got the PG from. But anyway, he's about to pursue the rest of them when he's tackled by this burly Mexican sheriff played by Al Lettieri, in a rare good guy role for Al, actually. So basically the sheriff's pissed off that he wants to kill somebody, and he goes, I've had, Frank Banks in my sights for, we got to get Frank to go to trial because there's a witness that saw him kill somebody. Well, the sheriff gets away from him by kicking him in the balls and leaving him there. He goes after the other guys. Now, the other guys basically have gotten to a Mexican village, are eating somebody's food, and then Choo Choo goes on the explanation about how his father was killed in a train wreck and he lost his hand, but to get even, he cut a part of the rail out so the train would derail, and that's why he has this on his hand. It's fucking ludicrous. Nobody would do something like that, but again, we're going to movies. And I really like Neville Brand. He's a great fucking actor. He's pretty good in this too, regardless of the stupid hand thing. So, to set the sheriff up, Frank and his boys massacre an older couple and claim they're the sheriff and he isn't. They're just about to hang him when the Mexican sheriff shows up. And it has the other sheriff locked up to keep him, out of sight. Somehow, while this guy's locked up, they manage to catch Choo Choo. And Choo Choo is riding out with a guy who was appointed a deputy, and he's babbling and babbling and babbling. And finally he gets the upper hand, gets the gun away, and blows this guy away. Well, at that point, the sheriff has broken out of jail and is hot on his trail, and finally corners him when the idiot falls into a pit of quicksand. He's just about to pull him out when Choo Choo apologizes for what happened to his son. Then he lets go of him and bloop, sinks into quicksand. So, the sheriff who has been tracking the last two winds up getting shot out of the saddle and falls down, takes this huge, whoever did with the stunt man did this, my hat's off to him. This is a huge fucking bump off a cliff. So they leave him for dead. Well, they go into this town, and Frank has a girlfriend played by Isla Vega, and Jacob wants to get away from Frank, and again, Frank calls him the N-word and says, give me $1,000, and sells his girlfriend to him. And then winds up that his girlfriend had a kid by him, and the kid's in a convent, so Frank's going to go visit the kid in the convent. Not a good idea. But anyway, sheriff comes upon the other injured Mexican sheriff, gets him, but won't let him take his gun, and brings him into the town where he thinks that Frank and the other is hiding out. He kicks it, this is really fucked up. He throws at the sheriff through the glass window of the bar while he jumps in and just guns Jacob down in front of the bar for no reason. Shoots him 6 times. Now they go after Frank, who's in the convent. And there's a bunch of shit and something going on, like a mental fucking thing. But basically, the sheriff does the same thing that Frank did. He grabs his daughter and holds a gun to her head and shoots Frank and wounds him. Well, he decides to drag him back for the other sheriff, who, when he drags Frank back, unfortunately tells him that the witness against Frank died, and Frank starts laughing and says, well, this and that and the other thing. He goes, I want to press charges. All of a sudden, the shotgun goes off, and Frank is cut in half. Now, there was never a shotgun in the fucking movie. This is another weird-ass thing. All of a sudden, Richard Harris pulls out a shotgun. Well, he starts riding away, and the other Mexican sheriff starts yelling, stop, I have to arrest you, stop, I have to arrest you. And in the typical 70s downbeat ending, he shoots him in the back and he pitches out of the saddle. Really weird movie, and the other weird thing is that basically Warner Brothers shit all over this thing, and instead of actually getting a score for it, they lifted certain elements of music by Jerry Fielding from the Wild Bunch, especially the chase scenes. So they dropped that in. You can tell where there was a shift in directors because Fuller was replaced by somebody, and you can just see how it just doesn't work. And another story that was floating around is that the stuntman for the day didn't show up. He was sick. And Taylor, Latari, and Richard Harris decided they could do their own stunts. Well, Latari broke a finger going through a door, and Taylor took a fall off a horse and dislocated his shoulder. So luckily the footage was intact that they could actually use it because the guys couldn't work the next day. Another interesting aspect of the film is that it reunited several people. Neville Brand and William Smith were stars of the TV series Laredo, going way back. William Smith and Rod Taylor literally beat the shit out of each other for real and hurt each other during the filming of Darker Than Amber in, I believe it was 1972, where the end fight turned real, and William Smith basically stomped Robert Taylor's arm on camera and broke it, and I believe Taylor hit him with a real bottle and busted him open, and I also believe he fucked up his leg with a 2x4. So, actually, that fight scene got Robert Klaus the director job on, what the hell was the Bruce Lee movie? Game of Death, I think it was. Or Enter the Dragon, rather. I'm sorry. Kung Fu, confuses me sometimes. Yeah, it was Enter the Dragon. That's what got Robert Klaus the director job. That fight in Enter the Dragon. So, interestingly enough, it reunited a bunch of people, but the movie is really fucking violent for a PG movie, and I believe I saw it paired with Man in the Wilderness, which, if you saw The Revenant with Leonardo DiCaprio, this film came first. Richard Harris again played Zach, the guy who was mauled by a bear and abandoned by his people. And that's, basically they're dragging this ship that they have full of beaver pelts through the wilderness, captained by John Huston. And the cast is kind of weird because it seems like a lot of them are mostly Brits, like Percy Herbert's in it. But you look for Scotty, James Doohan from Star Trek in a small role too, as Benoit. So this one's really, it's more of a, this one drags a little bit. And, there's some skirmishes with the Indians and stuff. But I know it was released on a DVD as a double feature, but I could swear I also saw it theatrically as they appeared Men in the Wilderness, because it was 1971 up with that. They're worth a look. And, like I said, Deadly Trackers is really disgustingly sadistic at points, and like most of the action sort of takes place in the opening sequences, and then it's that track down the bad guys type of thing. But like I say, it's got a great cast, and really worth the look. So I would, give these ones a look also. So that's our show for today. Thanks for all the new subscribers tuning in and the old subscribers for hanging out with us, and we'll see you on the next episode. So until then, stay safe.